Hello, Bible readers. It is Friday, March 12th. We're reading from Amos, or Amos, chapters 1 through 4, and then you've got 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 5 through chapter 3. There is almost unanimous agreement that Amos is the earliest of all the prophetic books. You might see some Bibles in their table of contents, they might show, the prophets. And so there are many, right? Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, all these prophets. And Amos is not a trendsetter, Amos is the original. Much like Mark is the original gospel that Luke and Matthew and others kind of pattern themselves after, Amos becomes a pattern of a certain kind of writing, a genre, if you will. A prophetic text is special in the history of religion, a unique tradition, you could say. And Amos talks about prophecies of the approaching end of the existence of God's people based on God's judgment that they aren't living to divine standards. That's what a prophetic book sounds like. And maybe that comes, like we say, duh, yeah, that's what one of the prophets says. But Amos is the first voice to sound quite like this, to sound off quite like this. Amos, my commentary was mentioning, Amos is one of the most important turning points in the history of Israel's religion, since this is going to shape everything from now on. That which the prophets say, those in generations to come want to show that the prophets were right. And so a lot of what later writings will be about is how, look, the prophets said this would happen, and here it's happening. There's two distinct traits to Amos himself. One, Amos uses very powerful language. And number two, Amos has a passion for the oppressed. Many of the prophets do, but Amos in particular. Amos has been used throughout the last couple hundred years as the social justice prophet. We oftentimes, if we're going to lift up how God cares about the poor or the oppressed, we're going to turn to Amos. Amos we don't know much about him. Some people try to read into what he wrote to say more about him than we probably really can say, but we do know he's a herdsman and a trimmer of sycamore trees, so he's a tree guy. And Uzziah is the king of Judah when Amos is around, and Jeroboam II is in Israel. Those two share very similar dates, 783 to 742 BC. And really, for the most part, peace and prosperity are the context for Amos's prophecy. There's some offensive wars that are done, but there is no defensive, one nation takes over Israel or takes over Judah. It's more of a kind of a status quo, and if anything, growing in land. Afflict the comfortable is what Amos is about. Sometimes it's comfort the afflicted. Well, Israel and Judah are not terribly afflicted during this time. They're comfortable. And so Amos is like, hey, you comfortable ones, why aren't you noticing the poor and the oppressed? And finally, he's not about reform. Amos is about the end of normal life on the land. He's not about a better life for the poor, but a time when all will be brought to despair. To 2 Corinthians, real quickly, Paul wants to bind the church at Corinth more closely to himself because he knows his mission is pure as opposed to some of the other voices Corinth has been hearing since his departure. The integrity and power of Paul's ministry is the issue that laces together everything from chapters 2 through 6. He's trying to show, I'm the real deal, and so you should listen to me. And so we read of Paul's special place in God's purposes in chapter 2. And then in chapter 3, Paul's ministry of the new covenant. That's where Paul places his mission and ministry is in the new covenant. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and all places.